up, everybody? We're in our new studio. Hold up the signs.
Soon to be studio.
Our in-progress studio. Sam's Ranch.
Sam's Ranch.
So hopefully this will give us a place that we can more consistently and easily make videos to get more content out for you guys. But it's a little bare right now, so
I literally just set this up tonight. So
yes.
We're going to be going live, hopefully more too, so should be good.
Yep. In this video, we're going to be talking all about summer trail camera strategies. And we just put out 5 on our farm and 1 on public this past weekend. In this video, we're going to go over if you should, some reasons why you should, some reasons why you shouldn't, when you should, and the best summer trail camera locations. So start off right off the bat, we think you should run trail cameras during the summertime. And we'll have some caveats to that, but that's our overall opinion to start out the video.
If you're looking to maximize an understanding of what's on the property, right?
Right.
And if you're a guy who doesn't care about that, then maybe you don't run them in the summer.
Yeah, and it's more like what you're looking for. If you just want any good buck, then it's really not important. And lately I've been trying to think about that. Like, is what I'm doing right now gonna help me tag a bigger buck or help me achieve my goals in the fall? Because everyone has a limited amount of time. And I've just been trying to, and it's like when you're sweating your rear end off on public land, walking through grass over your head in the humidity of summer, you're thinking, is this actually going to help me? And so there's a lot of fun that comes with it, but I think it's important to ask yourself whether it helps you as well. So the primary reason that people want to talk about not running summer trail cameras is they're talking about the shift in home range of a lot of bucks. And it's a very valid reason. A lot of people say something around half of the bucks are gonna shift from their summer range to their fall range. And that can be anywhere from a half mile up to, I've heard, maybe up to 5 miles. I mean, that might be on the extreme end, but they could change a lot. And that's a good reason. But here's some of our caveats to that theory and why we think it's still worth it to run trail cameras in the summer. The first reason is that not all bucks are going to shift their home range. And if they don't, then you can start patterning them even earlier, start finding their food sources, their travel routes, where they're bedding. One good example of this on our farm was the Big 7. So the Big 7 in 2018 didn't shift his home range hardly at all from summer to fall. And in 2019, all he did was basically move 1 draw over, and he still spent plenty of time in his summer home range. So he was a great example of a big old buck that did not move throughout the year, and Dad was able to take him last fall. So that was 1 buck, just for example, that didn't shift. Or on a public land scenario, it might be such a big property, or if you're fortunate you have a big property, a lot of times the deer aren't going to move that far from their summer locations, and you're still going to be able to hunt them or pick them up again in the fall and start to make a game plan from there.
Right, and when you have those seasons that start, some states start in September, Iowa here starts October 1st. A lot of these states, they're starting early in the season, and with the Big 7, we were watching the Big 7 move across the property. We had his pattern down weeks before the season started. I remember we were getting trail camera pictures from the Cuddy Link system a week before season, and the buck was doing the same thing. But he did shift he shifted at that perfect time right before season started.
Yeah, and interesting enough, we were patterning him. He was walking by a tree stand, actually. The same tree stand that you saw him out of in November in 2018. He was walking by that stand in the summer. So we're like, perfect. He didn't change his range at all. And come to find out, he did a little bit. But like I said, if he would have kept going in the rut, he would have been right by that same tree stand. I guarantee it. So expanding on that early season opener, a lot of bucks shift late. And actually a good example of this on our farm is a buck we call Squiggles. He's a stud younger deer. Actually, he'll be 4 this year, so he's getting to that older age class, but he's going to be huge someday if he makes it. And he doesn't really leave our farm, but he definitely spends a lot less time on our farm during the rut specifically. I wouldn't really say his home range shifts that much, but it seems like we get less trail camera pictures of him during the rut. So you can take that information and know that if you're hunting squiggles, you need to get it done in
Early.
October if you can. So you might be a little bit more aggressive. You can take that summer trail camera strategy and apply it to maybe bag another buck.
And another prime example of that was the fence buck. Our very first year of owning the farm, we had the fence buck literally every single day at this gap in the fence, leaving our property, and we kept choosing not to hunt it because we were on the fence about shooting this deer. Come to find out, he was actually much bigger than the trail camera made him to look, made him out to be, and we haven't seen him since that year. And Dad actually sat that spot once and saw glances of tine of him just to try to get a good look, but he was moving through too quick, and he couldn't get a good look at him. So that's a perfect example. You have a buck that's doing the same thing every single day, and you're watching it happen. You have a cellular trail camera, you know what's going on. You've got a virgin sit right then and there.
And he was doing that in the summertime as well.
Right.
The same fence guy. That's where we first picked him up.
Right.
And then like November hit and he was gone. Actually, never really saw him again.
Right.
Probably got killed. Touched on this one a little bit, but you can a lot of times find out where they shift to.
The more cameras you have out.
Yeah, so say you're hunting public. Another scenario is maybe it's a smaller chunk of public, or it could be a big chunk of public, but it's got huge ag fields around the perimeter that you can glass in the summertime. If there's, and maybe they are a half mile away, but if there's nothing but open ag fields between the deer that you're glassing or getting pictures of during the summertime and where that next fall cover is, you can kind of guess where they're going to shift to and then go hunt them there that fall. So you can start building your inventory and finding out where you want to hunt from there, even during the summertime. And the last thing, and I haven't really run this one by you, but the last thing I want to talk about is homecoming bucks. And I'm going to credit Don Higgins for this term, homecoming bucks. He wrote a blog about it in years past, but we've definitely seen this on our trail cameras quite a bit. I can think of a buck last fall that did this, and I'll show trail camera pictures of them. But a lot of times the bucks that are going to summer on your property or wherever you're getting trail camera pictures of the buck, a lot of times, especially late in the rut, they're going to swing through that area to check for does because they're already familiar with it. They just shifted the range, so they're going to come back. And late season, a lot of times those bucks come back. So those are two more great reasons that kind of contradict the you shouldn't run trail cameras because the bucks shift their home range in the fall, which, like I said, is valid for some deer, but like I said, on our property and a lot of our experiences, most of them also don't. So
some other reasons on why we think you should run trail cameras in the summer. One, and the biggest reason, is you're able to gain really good inventory and intel on what's on that property. This will let you, really gauge of what's around in that area. Is there something there that you really want to start to pattern right out of the gate? You really want to hunt, or is it really not something that you're really jumping at the bit to get to? If you obviously have more history with that property, you're going to know, maybe some deer move in, different time frames of the year. Maybe you got that shift from another property that comes into yours where you have some mega giants show up. But with the
so don't completely disregard it. Maybe if you don't find what you're looking for in the summertime,
right,
it might be a takeaway from that.
Right, but you got that inventory to know if that's the property you want to start out right away at, right? So
it can be a great time to maybe dive into some new areas. That one thing I asked him this weekend is I ended up putting the trail camera out in the little buck unit where we already hunt because we think we're going to get pictures of big bucks, but I was half tempted to just go somewhere completely new and try to find a new area with big bucks. So that can be a great time to start building inventory.
And then obviously it's a lot of fun to not only get out and get outside, but when you are able to check those trail camera photos, it's like Christmas in July or August or September, right? You check the trail camera and you got this awesome buck that you put on your wall and you're like, I'm hunting him in a couple weeks, right? So it's a lot of fun to get that, and every time you check a trail camera, it's like Christmas morning.
So our biggest reasons for why you shouldn't then would be if you're someone who has to go check your trail cameras too often. If having them out in the woods is just too much for you to handle. To be honest, we're kind of like that. We've been there, we've done that. That's why we have the Cuddy Link systems, because we can stay off our property but still get the trail camera pictures coming out of it. So maybe that's something to look into if you're that type of person, or just practice a lot of self-restraint. But going in there and checking them too often and putting more pressure on the property is going to do you way more harm than good. And then building off of that is putting them too deep in the cover. It's going to do you more harm than good. You're going to be putting pressure on your property when you don't need to. Like I said in the beginning of this video, is you want to be helping your chances of killing a buck or reaching your goals this fall, not hurting them. So those are the main reasons of why you shouldn't. When should you put summer trail cameras out if you choose to? It might be a good idea to wait until July so you can really tell what a mature buck's going to turn into, but that depends on your goals. If you just care about hunting any good deer, then even earlier is going to suffice. You can kind of tell if they're going to be big or not, like by June, honestly, middle of June. But if you want to tell the difference between like a 180 or a 150, you might have to wait until July. So it's kind of dependent on your goals. And to be honest, this last trail camera run out might have been a little bit early, but just was chomping at the bit to start getting summer trail camera pictures. And we didn't go the Cuddy Link route. We just went, straight regular trail cameras. Part of the reason being is I wanted to run a little bit of experiment to make sure the Cuddy Links, they're a little bit bigger. Some people say deer can sense radio frequencies. I think that's giving them way too much credit, but perfect time to test out that theory and put a few trail cameras out.
And it doesn't hurt to have them out sooner than later either, obviously. If you just don't check it,
right.
You let it soak for a while, it doesn't do you any harm there.
Right.
So to touch a little bit on some of the best locations to put, summer trail cameras, it really comes down to easy areas that you have access to, right? You don't obviously, like you said before, don't want to go into the gnarliest bedding area on your property. Good places, obviously, if you're able to do this on private or public, some states are allowed to. You can put minerals out or bait deer just to get the deer to come to one central location, get a lot of good inventory photos, get an idea of where deer are. Then you can gauge exactly where the deer is coming from. From there, you can dissect the photo even further and run along from there.
The next best location that I think there is going to be on food sources. So any food plots, ag fields, edge of corn is really good because a lot of times they walk the edge right on corn. But one thing with food sources is a lot of times, and this doesn't get talked about that much, but you can tell exactly where they're coming out into the field by the amount of browse pressure. One of the locations that we put on our farm, one of the trail cameras that we put out this past weekend that's where basically, we knew this from previous years, but you can tell looking at the beans that's where all the deer are coming out. I mean, almost all of them are nibbled almost all the way to the ground, whereas the rest of the field is significantly taller. So it's easy to walk on the edge of the field and you're going to see trails, but a lot of times the trails in the summertime are really overgrown, so it's hard to tell. And we knew that trail was beat down. You can hardly see it. Mm-hmm. But all those beans are just mowed down, so you know a lot of deer are hanging out there. So that's one thing you can go off of. And then there's also some native browse, stuff like mulberry trees. They eat those things year round. And one of my best trail camera locations was a mulberry tree in between the edge of the woods and standing corn, and they would go and nibble on that. It was a year-round scrape, so different stuff like that can be effective.
And that was on public too.
That was on public.
So you can get a little bit more trifecta if you combine that with a fence or a creek crossing as well.
Definitely.
A lot of food sources have fence rows right next to them. If you can find that hole in the gap, an easier place, barbed wire's cut, a tree's falling down on something, mm-hmm. That's a naturally easy place for something to walk through. And deer are just like humans. They're going to take the path of least resistance and they're going to go through that area. You can also look for creek crossings, places where the deer are pushed up by the banks of the creek where they have to cross at a mm-hmm. specific point that makes it easiest, like I said before, least resistance, and really funnels the deer to perfect spots to get photos of them.
And then that kind of combines with our last big one is just water holes. Obviously it's hot out, the deer are going to need water, so if you can find a place where the deer are congregating next to a water source, it's going to be a good trail camera location. And the fifth thing I had written down was not bedding areas.
Right, we touched on that earlier.
We touched on that earlier, but I've done it in the past, and not only is it bad for intrusion, but you just don't get that many trail camera pictures. I mean, they're just not as consistent. To be honest, a lot of times they're bedding closer to the food anyway, so they're not even going to be in the bedding areas. You're going to be working your butt off to get back in there and sweating, so you might as well just stay out. So that was
so you mean to tell me you can kill deer without hunting beds?
You can
Like
get summer
specific
trail
beds?
camera pictures of deer without putting them in the beds. I know that.
All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you guys liked it, please make sure you hit the thumbs up button and to subscribe to see future content.
We'll see you all in the next one.